She told the world I destroyed our marriage. Everyone believed her. They pitied her, mocked me, wrote me off as the quiet husband who finally got exposed. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I stayed silent, and that silence is what scared her later. Before we begin, if stories about truth, betrayal, and quiet payback hit close to home, subscribe, hit like, and leave a comment. You're not alone here. It started on a Thursday evening that felt painfully ordinary. I was still at my desk at the logistics office, fluorescent lights humming, coffee gone cold, spreadsheets filling the screen. The building was half empty, that end-of-week calm where everyone's already mentally gone. I should have been heading home to dinner in the familiar routine, but deadlines don't care about routines. My phone buzzed once, then again. Then it wouldn't stop. I ignored it at first. I always did. I wasn't the kind of man glued to notifications. But when the same name kept lighting up the screen, my brother Jason, I finally answered. "What the hell did you do?" he asked. No hello, no build-up. I leaned back in my chair, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Go online, now." I didn't live on social media, never saw the appeal of narrating my life for strangers, but something in his voice, tight, worried, made my chest feel heavy. I opened my laptop browser and typed in the one site I barely touched, and there she was, my wife, Laura, front and center, red eyes, mascara streaked, tissues in hand, perfect lighting, perfect angle. A performance so polished it almost looked like a magazine shoot. The caption hit harder than the image. After years of giving my heart to the wrong man, I finally see the truth. Betrayal changes everything. I read it twice, then a third time. Betrayal. Wrong man. The comments were already pouring in. Friends, family, co-workers, people I'd shared holidays with, people who had eaten at my table. "You deserve better." I always knew something was off about him. "So proud of you for speaking your truth." My hand stayed still on the keyboard. My face didn't move. Inside, something went cold. I kept scrolling. More photos. Her wedding ring on the counter beside crumpled tissues. Her staring out a window with a caption about loneliness. Each post more dramatic than the last. The engagement was exploding. Hearts, shares, sympathy stacked on sympathy. And the strangest part? None of it was true. I hadn't cheated. Not once. Not emotionally. Not physically. My life was painfully predictable. Up at 6, out the door by 7:30. Work, meetings, calls, home by 6, dinner, news, bed, repeat. If excitement had a scale, mine barely registered. My phone rang again. This time, it was my mother. "I saw what happened," she said softly. "I just wish you'd talk to us before things got this bad." "Mom," I said evenly, "I didn't do what she's saying." Silence. "Why would she say it then?" she finally asked. That question hung in the air long after the call ended. I stared back at the screen, at the woman I'd been married to for 8 years, now recasting herself as the wounded hero of a story where I was the villain. And that's when I noticed something that didn't fit. The timing. Just days earlier, Laura had mentioned needing space, said she felt disconnected, wanted time to think. I'd assumed stress, maybe counseling, a rough patch. I never imagined a public execution. The front door opened. I heard her keys hit the counter. She walked in calm, dry-eyed, relaxed, no trace of the broken woman the internet had been crying for. "Hey," she said lightly. "How was work?" I turned the laptop toward her without a word. She glanced at the screen and smiled, not warmly, not nervously, satisfied. "I just told my truth," she said, and in that moment, as the house stayed quiet and the world outside roared with judgment, I realized something important. This wasn't an emotional outburst. This was deliberate, and I was done being loud. I stayed quiet. That night moved slowly, like the air had thickened inside the house. The kitchen light buzzed faintly above us, casting a dull yellow glow over the counter where Laura dropped her purse. The smell of roasted chicken still lingered from the dinner I'd cooked the night before. Ordinary things, familiar things. They felt out of place now, like props from a life that had already ended. She moved around the kitchen comfortably, pouring herself a glass of water, scrolling through her phone with her thumb. Each vibration made the screen light up, reflection flickering across her face. I didn't need to ask what it was. I already knew. Sympathy, validation, applause. I stayed where I was, sitting at the table, hands folded, laptop still open between us like an accusation that hadn't been spoken out loud. "You're quiet," she said casually, not looking up. "I'm listening," I replied. That made her pause, just for a second. Then she took a sip of water and leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You've been distant for months," she said. "Cold, always working, always somewhere else." I nodded once. No argument, no defense. The silence stretched, and I could tell it bothered her more than shouting ever would have. "You don't even care?" she asked. I finally looked at her. "I care about facts." Her jaw tightened. "Facts don't change how I feel." "Feelings don't change facts either," I said calmly. She scoffed and turned away, tapping on her phone again. Another post went up. I didn't need to see it to know. She was feeding the fire in real time. Later that evening, my phone started lighting up again. Messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years, old coworkers, distant relatives, even a guy I played softball with once, years ago. "What happened, man? Didn't think you were that kind of guy. Praying for Laura. Hope you get help." Each message landed like a quiet blow. No yelling, no drama, just a steady erosion of the life I'd built piece by piece. Laura noticed the phone in my hand. "People are concerned," she said. "You should understand that." "Concern usually comes after truth," I replied. She laughed softly. "Truth is subjective." That was when I realized how far gone this had already become. We went to bed without another word. She turned away from me, scrolling until the screen dimmed. I lay there staring at the ceiling fan, listening to it click faintly with every rotation. I didn't sleep much, not because I was angry, but because my mind wouldn't stop cataloging details, dates, conversations, patterns, things I'd brushed off before suddenly lined up too neatly to ignore. The next morning, the house felt different, quieter. Laura left early, claiming she needed air. I watched her car disappear down the street through the front window, then sat alone at the kitchen table with my coffee cooling untouched. By noon, the damage had spread. A call from my supervisor asking if everything was okay at home. A text from my aunt saying she was disappointed. Another from Jason saying people were choosing sides. I didn't correct anyone. I didn't post. I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. At work, I kept my head down. Numbers didn't judge. Spreadsheets didn't whisper. But even there, I felt eyes on me. Conversations stopped when I walked past. Pity has a sound. So does suspicion. That evening, Laura came home humming, carrying shopping bags, light, almost cheerful. "People have been so supportive," she said over dinner, cutting into her food. "It feels good not to carry everything alone." I watched her carefully, the relaxed shoulders, the easy smile. This wasn't grief. This was relief. "You ever think about what this does to me?" I asked quietly. She didn't look up. "You should have thought about that earlier." I nodded once more. Still no fight. Still no raised voice. Later, alone in the living room, I scrolled through her posts again, not to react, but to observe. Words chosen carefully, accusations implied, never stated. Enough to destroy me, not enough to corner herself. That's when it became clear. This wasn't about pain. This was about control. And while she was busy telling her story to the world, I sat there in the quiet house, saying nothing, watching everything, and understanding one simple truth. Silence makes people underestimate you. The shift happened quietly, the way real disasters usually do. No shouting, no slammed doors, just a subtle change in how people looked at me. At work, conversations lowered when I walked by. At the grocery store, a neighbor I'd known for years suddenly avoided eye contact. The story had grown legs, and it was running ahead of me in every direction. That Friday evening, Laura suggested we attend her cousin's birthday dinner. "A small gathering," she said. "Family, nothing serious." Her tone was almost pleasant, like the last 48 hours hadn't happened. I agreed without hesitation. Not because I wanted to go, but because I wanted to see. The restaurant was one of those trendy places trying hard to look casual. Exposed brick, low lighting, music just loud enough to prevent real conversation. We walked in together, but it felt like we arrived separately. Laura smiled wide, greeting everyone with hugs that lasted a second too long. I followed a step behind, invisible. That's when I noticed it. The glances. Not the friendly the kind that linger, then flick away. A couple of people whispered. Someone laughed quietly. A hand patted my shoulder with forced sympathy. "There he is," a man at the table said. "The workaholic." A few chuckles followed. Laura didn't correct him. She didn't need to. The story had already been told. Dinner was a blur of clinking glasses and carefully worded comments. Someone mentioned how hard it must be discovering who someone really is. Another talked about strength and moving on. Each sentence was a needle, and every eye seemed to wait for my reaction. I kept eating. Calm. Silent. Laura reached across the table at one point, placing her hand over mine like a performance. "We're just figuring things out," she said softly, for everyone to hear. "Healing takes time." More nods, more approval. Inside, I noted everything, her choice of words, the way she framed herself, the way she never once actually accused me. She let others do it for her. It was elegant, cruel, effective. After dessert, someone pulled Laura aside. I watched her lean in, whispering, eyes wet on command. When she came back, she looked at me with something close to triumph. On the drive home, she turned on the radio like nothing had happened. I stared out the windshield, the city lights stretching into long lines as we stopped at red lights. "You embarrassed me tonight," she said suddenly. I glanced at her. "By eating dinner?" "By not defending yourself," she snapped. "People think you don't care." "I don't correct lies told by implication," I replied. She shook her head. "You've changed." So had she. But I didn't say that. At home, she went straight to the bedroom. I stayed in the living room, lights off, phone face down. I didn't need to see the next post to know it was coming. And when I finally checked, there it was. A photo from the restaurant. Just her, captioned with something about strength and clarity. The comments were brutal. Some blamed me openly now. Others speculated freely. A few even invented details. The truth didn't matter anymore. Momentum did. That was the moment I stopped feeling stunned and started feeling focused. I opened my laptop and began laying things out. Nothing dramatic. Just facts, dates, receipts, calendars, messages. I wasn't building an argument. I was building a record. I worked methodically, like I always had. No emotion, just order. As the hours passed, a pattern emerged, one I hadn't seen before because I'd never needed to look. Late nights that matched specific withdrawals. Errands that didn't align with schedules. Stories that changed slightly depending on the audience. Nothing explosive on its own. But together, it told a very different story than the one being shared online. Around midnight, Laura came downstairs for water. She stopped when she saw me at the table, papers spread out neatly, screen glowing. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Organizing," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "About what?" "Our life," I replied calmly. She hesitated, then shrugged. "Don't overthink it." She went back upstairs. I stayed where I was. For the first time since this began, I felt something close to clarity. Not anger, not revenge, certainty. She thought noise was power. She thought attention was control. She thought silence meant weakness. She was wrong. And as I sat there in the quiet house, surrounded by timelines and facts, one thought settled in, steady and unshakable. People who talk the loudest rarely see what's coming. By Monday morning, silence had become my shield. I moved through the day like nothing was wrong, and that seemed to unsettle people more than any outburst would have. At work, I nodded, answered questions, delivered results. At home, I spoke only when necessary. Laura watched me closely now. I could feel it. The way her eyes lingered when she thought I wasn't paying attention. The way her confidence flickered when I didn't react the way she expected. She wanted a breakdown, an apology, a confession, anything she could point to and say, "See?" I was right. What she got instead was calm. That evening, she sat across from me at the kitchen table, scrolling again, smiling faintly at her screen. The light from her phone reflected in her eyes like a small fire she was feeding. "People are starting to ask questions," she said casually. "Are they?" I replied, sipping my coffee. "Some think the situation is complicated," she continued. Not everyone is taking sides anymore. I looked at her then. Truth has a way of doing that. She stiffened, just a little. You still haven't said anything publicly, she said. That makes you look guilty. Or patient, I answered. She laughed, but it came out sharp. You always think you're the smartest person in the room. I didn't respond. I just stood, carried my mug to the sink, and rinsed it slowly. I could feel her frustration rising, searching for somewhere to land. Later that night, voices drifted down the hallway. She was on the phone again, whispering, pausing, whispering some more. I didn't press my ear to the door. I didn't need to. The tension in her voice told me enough. When she came out, she startled when she saw me in the living room. How long were you standing there? She asked. Long enough, I said. She crossed her arms. You're being creepy. I'm being observant. That word hit her differently. She turned away without another comment. The next day, my brother Jason stopped by unexpectedly. He didn't sit at first, just paced the living room, running a hand through his hair. I'm getting calls, he said, people asking if you're okay, some saying they don't buy her story anymore. I nodded. People notice patterns. She's telling everyone you've been emotionally checked out for months. I've been working, I replied. You've seen the hours. He studied my face. You're not panicking. No. Why? I met his eyes. Because panic comes from uncertainty. He didn't push further. He didn't need to. That night, Laura came home later than usual. She claimed she'd been with friends. Her explanation was vague, rushed. She avoided eye contact, moved too quickly, like someone afraid of being slowed down by questions. I didn't ask any. Instead, I watched as she tossed her keys into a drawer she'd never used before. I noted the faint scent of unfamiliar cologne in the air when she passed. I noted how she showered immediately, how she checked her phone even while the water was running. She was careful. Just not careful enough. On Wednesday, her mother called me. Her voice was softer than before, less certain. I just wanted to check in, she said. Laura's been stressed. So have I replied. There was a pause. She's staying with me for a few nights. That's her choice. Another pause, longer this time. She said you've been acting strange. I almost smiled. Silence often looks strange to people who expect noise. When the call ended, I sat back and exhaled slowly. The ground was shifting. I could feel it, small cracks forming in the version of events Laura had worked so hard to sell. That evening, she packed a small bag, moved quickly, efficiently. I need space, she said, standing by the door. I know, I replied. She hesitated. You're not even going to ask where I'm going? No. That unsettled her more than anything else. As the door closed behind her, the house fell into a deep, almost peaceful quiet. No scrolling, no whispers, no performances, just stillness. I walked to the table and laid everything out one last time. Not to admire it, not to celebrate it, just to be sure. Dates lined up, stories unraveled. The picture was clear now. I didn't feel victorious. I felt ready. Because when someone builds their power on lies, all it takes is patience for the truth to make the noise for you. The morning after Laura left, the house felt lighter, not happier, just honest, no tension. Humming in the walls, no performance waiting behind a door. I slept better than I had in weeks. When I woke up, I made coffee, sat at the table, and looked at the neat stack of papers I'd organized so carefully. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger burns fast and blind. What I felt now was calm, and calm is dangerous when you've been underestimated. By midday, the first crack turned into a fracture. Laura's mother called again. This time she didn't sound confused. She sounded shaken. I need to ask you something, she said slowly, and I need you to be honest with me. I always have been, I replied. She told me about a contradiction, a small one, a story Laura had told her that didn't match something she'd told someone else. Then another detail that didn't add up. Then a question about money. The tone of the call changed as she spoke, realization settling in piece by piece. I think I need to see what you've been seeing, she finally said. We met later that afternoon at a quiet diner. Neutral ground. I brought nothing dramatic, no speeches, just facts, timelines, records, screenshots. I slid them across the table one by one and let the silence do the work. She didn't interrupt. She didn't argue. She just read. By the time she looked up, her hands were trembling. "This started long before the posts," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "The posts were just the cover." She closed her eyes for a long moment. "She's been planning to leave." "Yes, and she wanted everyone to think it was your fault." I nodded once. That evening, the truth moved faster than any lie ever could. Quiet conversations, phone calls, messages that started with, "I owe you an apology." People began comparing notes. Stories stopped lining up. Sympathy shifted. Laura called me that night. Her voice was unsteady. "You showed them everything, didn't you?" "I showed them the truth," I replied. "You had no right," she snapped, fear creeping through her anger. "I had every right," I said evenly. "You took my name and turned it into a weapon. I just took it back." She cried. Real crying this time. No captions, no audience, just consequences. By the end of the week, the posts were gone. Then her account disappeared entirely, not deactivated loudly, just vanished. The silence she'd used against me had finally found her. At work, my supervisor called me in, not to question me, but to apologize. The tension lifted. The sideways looks stopped. A project I'd been waiting on quietly moved forward again. Life resumed its rhythm, steady and real. Laura moved in with her mother permanently. The story she'd tried to control slipped out of her hands. When people asked, she avoided details now. When they asked me, I didn't gloat. I didn't embellish. I told the truth once, and that was enough. Weeks later, I heard the final irony through a mutual friend. The man she'd been so careful to protect, so desperate to preserve appearances for, had walked away the moment the truth surfaced. Reputation, it turned out, mattered to him too. Just not hers. I ran into Laura months later by chance. She looked smaller somehow, tired. She congratulated me on a promotion she'd heard about. I thanked her politely. There was nothing left to say. As I walked away, one thought stayed with me, clear and sharp. I didn't win by being louder. I didn't win by being cruel. I won by refusing to be erased, and that's the part people never forget. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever stayed quiet while the world got it wrong, subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Your silence has power too.